Okay, so they gave us a very interesting speech at the last speech. So first they said that we're not addressing the burden of proof, and that we're not addressing the topic. And I'd like to say that that's, like, the way you're framing the debate is you're framing it as this idea that, all things being equal, we wish there was a world where nobody would fight. But then at the same time, you're also conceding that war is inevitable. And you really can't have it both ways. So on their side of the house, they present to you a world where they say, well, powerful countries, they should practice this non-lethal warfare. They should use non-lethal weapons because, since war is endemic, when they go to war, they won't kill as many people. But on our side of the house, we provide you with a lot of analysis as to why war itself is the greatest harm in the round. We explain to you that it displaces people. It prevents societies from self-actualizing. It causes untold mass suffering. It causes people to, like they brought up vaccines, it causes people to die of disease. It causes societies to break down. It causes states to fail. And when these things happen, they hurt the least well off. But on our side of the house, we provide you a lot of pragmatic analysis as to why lethal warfare provides a better incentive structure that decreases war overall. So they say that no, the best way to have peace is if everybody got in a circle and sang kumbaya, and everybody agreed that, killing is terrible. So when we go to war with each other, we're going to, maim each other. Like, they still don't provide that link as to why this morally superior form of warfare that they're advocating for doesn't lead to peace. It just leads to war that's less bad. And on our side, we believe that, from a standpoint of preventing war, from a standpoint of easing suffering worldwide, it's better if soldiers suffer in a certain way. It's better if soldiers die. It's better if soldiers have these kind of PTSD issues. It's better if war is an ugly, terrible experience. Because if war wasn't so bad, and it was like a contest of ideas, that's another interesting point they bring up. They say that no, in a world with non-lethal warfare, conflicts wouldn't be resolved by strength. They'd be resolved by whose idea was better. Well, if it's about talking it out and deciding whose idea is better, then wouldn't there have not been a war in the first place? Once countries resort to violence, I don't care if it's non-lethal violence, the point of the contest at that point is to decide who gets the upper hand on the battlefield, who wins the war. And they also provide this interesting situation where if a country captures a prisoner that they've maimed, they're just going to let him go. Or they're, going to hold them in detention to watch after their health and then release them. They're making it seem like soldiers aren't, like, when a soldier's captured, like, they're trivializing the idea of prisoner capture. Like, in my mind, the best conception of your argument is a situation where you have armies fighting each other conventionally, but using these non-lethal weapons, and when they capture the opponent, when they capture the enemy, they hold them, they prevent them from going back to battle, and, they give them food and everything. They preserve their lives, but they remove them from the enemy's pool of manpower. But now they're proposing that, screw it. We're not even going to do anything. We're not going to try to win the war. We're just going to, keep talking while our young people are maiming each other. And the weapons they used as their examples, like the sticky foam, the dazzler, all kinds of things. You have to also remember that some of the greatest non-lethal weapons in history were poison gas. We have white phosphorus. We have a lot of Agent Orange. We have so many different weapons that are non-lethal but cause these horrible side effects. And that is kind of an additional pragmatic point of ours is how do we legislate this? How do we actually implement it? And how do we prevent certain states who don't have the capabilities, who don't have the will, who are aggressive nations, from practicing lethal warfare while we're on the other side practicing non-lethal warfare? There's all this analysis we provide you as to why this world is actually worse and why the people in your country are going to be so much worse off because you're not able to defend yourself to the best of your abilities. And they make it also seem that war war currently is a trivial matter, and that we have a ton of choice in how we fight them. But when it comes to leading a state, they make this argument that, hey, in the American Constitution it says all men are created equal and are endowed with their creator with certain inalienable rights. And among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, like, they said life is a right of all people, regardless of where you live. But all just war theorists, Brian Orr and Michael Walzer, like, they all talk about how when a state commits aggression, when a state invades another state, when a state violates another state's rights, its people, its soldiers who represent that state, no longer have that right to life. And I feel like in a world where that wasn't the case, where, people even the victims of aggression have to try to preserve the lives of the opponent the same as they're preserving the lives of their own people, that this world is not one that Kant would like to live in. This world is not one that rule utilitarians would like to live in. This is definitely not a world that Aristotle would like to live in. Like, they're creating these very caricaturish, like, arguments about Kant and about Aristotle, and they're making it seem like these people, in all circumstances, favor preserving life. But that doesn't leave open for the nuance that war creates, and that the idea that your primary duty, the Catholic Church, which is a moral paragon these days, and we've talked a little bit, and like a real huge advocate of just war theory, it really came out of the church. They talk about how it is a grave duty to defend your people in times of war, and that's really what we're emphasizing here on our side of the house, is that anything that you can do to shorten the wars of your country, and that's a good point of rebuttal to some of their argumentation that they just gave you about how wars will be shorter because people won't be dying. But on our side of the house, we actually warrant you this claim, and we walk you through it, and we explain how when it comes to decision makers who have to deal with political, social, and economic results of their endeavors, when they know that their people are going to die, when they know that soldiers are going to perish, when they know that war is going to be this horrible thing, they're less likely to engage in it. Look at one of the primary drivers of peace between great powers these days, the idea of nuclear deterrence. Now, nuclear weapons are extremely lethal. We target them, and during the Cold War, we targeted Soviet cities filled with civilians, and we intended to kill every last one of them, and they did the same to us. And through this equilibrium, this balance of terror, knowing that war would be so horrible, we didn't resort to that war. And you bring up Ulysses S. Grant, you show his quotes, and you talk about how there's never a point where drawing the sword couldn't have been avoided. Yeah, right? Like the place for diplomacy is before war. But when war breaks out, it's not up to the governments to screw around with their people's lives. Like, it's up to the governments to defend them to the best of their ability. And again, we give you all this game theory analysis. We explain to you why the incentives are better on our side of the house. And we talk about how we get less war overall. And this is not a different debate than what we're having. This is the debate we're having. The debate we're having is which form is more virtuous, more morally superior. And the form of warfare that gets you less war, that gets you better resolution to conflict, that gets you people actually talking, and that gets you a clear winner. Because on their side of the house, what you get is you get a lot of situations, maybe in the future, where two sides are non-lethally killing or non-lethally going to war, and there's not a clear winner to the conflict. They just have a ceasefire. They take that time to regroup, and they go back at it again. You see this a lot with humanitarian intervention in the Third World. And our side of the house, we believe that when there's a war, it's a horrible thing. It causes suffering for everyone, but the best thing that can happen is for it to be over quickly. And to do that, you must intervene decisively. And the most decisive way of intervening in warfare is unfortunately lethal warfare. But again, you're acting on your grave duty to defend your own people, not some notional duty that you have to everyone, even though by acting on that grave duty and by everyone working to defend themselves, you're actually advancing the cause of humanity. And again, I'd like to thank Dr. Barry and Major Parsons for putting this all together, and for the very interesting speeches that we got out of your side of the house, with some robots and such. And definitely look forward to doing this again. Yeah, it was really a great time, and everyone on our team here really enjoyed brainstorming and coming up with ideas for this. And who knows? The future, we can't predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen. But definitely as the United States, we have unprecedented levels of economic resources and the ability to do this. And that's why it's important that we're having this conversation. Well, thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing your final rebuttal.